Welcome back to ET with GOTB. So we have our first trophy winner and the WSL delivered some big results. So let's get into it. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. Before we get started, for those of you watching on YouTube, I would just like to confirm that this is not us recording a hostage video. This is us coming to you from Madrid, and the setup is the best I could do in our hotel room. So we're on a kind of creaky chair, if you can hear that. It's really hard to stay still.
Just chill.
If I sit back too far, I disappear into the corner. So yeah, for those of you listening, if you can hear creaking, it is the chair we're sitting on.
It's Rachel moving.
For those of you watching, we are not being held hostage. I can promise you that. We're here for the Champions League.
Oh, it might be.
Uh-oh. No. We do have plenty to run through, of course, in this episode, which is very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to getting into it. But before we do that, this is your weekly reminder to make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen or watch your podcasts, and make sure you're following us across all of our platforms at Girls on the Ball. We are on everything, so you don't miss any of our coverage. Also, leave us a comment, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. Any questions as well that we can go through for our next episode. Always happy to have those as well. Okay, what a weekend of football we have had, Soph. Chelsea faced Manchester City for the first of 4 games in the Subway League Cup final, and finally put that League Cup final demon to bed a little bit. It's been eluding them for a little while now.
3 years in a row.
Yeah, and they managed to win that trophy. And while there were only 4 WSL games actually played this weekend, there was at least 2 really interesting results, which maybe delivered a bit of a surprise, I think. So we are going to get into that, and of course look ahead to the Champions League, which returns this week and is why we're in Madrid. We're not here again for the crack, as nice a city as it is.
Although it's pouring with rain today.
Yeah, which is quite disappointing actually. But hey, we aren't here for the sunshine. Sophie, you will as ever pick a player of the week, and then you will shine Sophie's spotlight on a moment of magic or a goal or a tactic that impressed you, okay? Mm-hmm. Good, okay. Moving into the League Cup final. Chelsea versus Manchester City, round 1. Chelsea winning 2-1, Ramirez, Fujino and Hasegawa with an own goal there, which was such a disappointing way for a League Cup final to end. It was one of those you're just like, actually, either team I thought kind of could have won it and deserved so, and it wouldn't have been controversial. But when it's an own goal, you're just a bit like, ow.
Especially given it was such an entertaining game.
Yeah.
Because, I think I do feel that no matter at that point in time, no matter how the goal was scored, it was always going to be Chelsea. Chelsea wrestled that control.
Yeah.
I think Manchester City did really well in large portions of the game. They pressed Chelsea. They tried to get into the box. They may be a bit too reluctant to shoot on first sight. They just kind of
took too many touches.
They took an extra touch here and then. I think Bunny Shaw and Viv were very guilty of that in the box as well, trying to find the perfect angle rather than just putting your laces through it. So I think that was a bit of a problem. But I think they had a really good spell after the first 10 minutes in the first half. They had a really good spell, and then around the goal, leading up to the goal, and then maybe the 5-10 minutes after the goal from Fujino, it looked like they were gonna, click into gear and then get the next one. They looked like favourites to win the game, and then Sonia Bompasto made big changes. Aggie Beaver-Jones, Michael Hermanda came on, and it just wrestled back the control and
that was about
back into
75 minutes or so.
Yeah, so there was 15 minutes to go or something like that, and it just turned everything on its head. And I think that's where the changes came in. Well, whether Nick Cushing had to, because of injury, make the changes he did. But I think Sonia Bompasto was decisive with it. She saw that the game was getting away from them, so she brought on 2 attacking talents to try and get it back. And they made an immediate impact. And if Hasegawa wasn't going to score that goal, someone else was going to score it, I think. So I felt at that time it was very much Chelsea's game.
Yeah, I think it was a case of City were very good in possession and Chelsea were very good out of possession, and they defended really well when City did attack them, and they really kind of limited those clear opportunities. And I think, yes, that hesitation from City's side was part of it, but I also think that Chelsea defended very well. So
I think, but that's Chelsea's ploy against City this season, especially. We saw it at Stamford Bridge. They're willing to not have the ball at times. They're willing to try and pick them off and hit them. When you have Mira Ramirez running through, I mean, we've seen time and time again that Alexandria can't deal with it.
Yeah.
So would deal with her pace. And last time it was Alana Kennedy as well. So I think it's that there's a very clear tactic from Chelsea about what they want to do and how they think they can beat City. And I think they have that versatility in their armoury, whereas maybe Manchester City don't.
Yeah, I would agree with that. How do you think Nick Cushing did his first game in charge? He'd only been there 3 or 4 days, only has one team to prepare for, I guess, for the next 2 weeks. But, I liked his post-match. I thought he spoke well about the players, and I think he was right to be proud of their performance. I do think it was an improvement from the last time Manchester City played Chelsea, and arguably an improvement on Manchester City's recent performances, I think. I think it does make it hard to predict the upcoming games because, will Knack be back for City? Like, it still felt fine enough margins, because City were creating opportunities, and you just need 1 or 2 of them to go in to maybe shift it the other direction. So, but I also then think that Chelsea are not the type of team who are committed to a single way of playing. They will change their style and they will be versatile if it means getting the win. So, kind of makes it hard to call. The next game is obviously in the Champions League, and it's 2-legged, so there's another kind of element to the game as well.
And the worry is for City, Bunny Shaw was feeling a hamstring, so that's got to be a worry. Virginia, she looked really, really good, but she's also just come back from injury. And then I saw the pictures of Kira Walsh training for Chelsea today, and you're like, well, that's another string to the bow that they've got to add
Absolutely.
in. So you do worry a little bit, I think.
And then very quickly, just to touch on the pitch. It did seem to make a lot of the headlines, which is frustrating because that shouldn't be what we're talking about after a League Cup final. But a pretty disgraceful pitch for a League Cup final to be played on.
It was. I think it's really hard, just in a kind of defence, trying to find a medium-sized stadium. Like 12:15 on a Saturday is silly. Kick-off time. I don't think there were many direct trains, if any, up to Derby. So maybe a bit more thought needs to go into where, once we found out the finalists, where these things, but then often these things are decided before the finalists are known. So that's always a tricky kind of thing, and there are always issues wherever they pick, it seems. I do think the pitch is one thing, but it's a championship club, right? I think they should be having better pitches as well. You don't expect a championship pitch to be that bad. So,
but arguably, the quality of the facilities for the players should be the most important thing. And yes, I know we want it in a place where fans can get to. And I guess a medium-sized stadium is easier to sell out, but go to a bigger pitch to have better facilities.
No, I'm with you. I would fully put it in a bigger stadium any day of the week because you know what you're getting with that kind of elite kind of facilities. But it was just, I do know that these things are planned long before the actual game day. So the grass may have been green when they booked it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I guess you put the pressure on to make sure that is in top quality condition. I went and did Spurs Brighton that weekend, and it actually made the Leighton Orient pitch look semi-decent, which is a difficult thing to do. So
part of it was sand, wasn't it? I think so.
It's just annoying because it's just then you end up.
I don't mean to be defending it. I'm not. It shouldn't have happened. It's not the right pitch for a final, and it definitely wouldn't happen in the men's game. Mainly because events always happen at Wembley, and maybe that's something to think about. And even in the men's game, you've got the National League Cups and stuff happening. You have that big weekend in May, don't you, where all of them happen at Wembley. So maybe that's something to think about on the women's side, that you just have a home for cup finals and stuff.
Then you know where it is all the time. Okay, let's move on to the WSL. There were 4 fixtures. We had 2 games on Friday evening and 2 games on Sunday. So it meant we actually got to cover 3 of them between us. Everton 1, Arsenal 3, Russo with 2 goals, Tony Payne and Mielda with an own goal there. Liverpool 3, Manchester United 1, Smith with 2, Nagano and Letizier with the others. Palace 3, Aston Villa 1, Nowen, Virden, Stengel and Parker with the goals. And Spurs and Brighton did not get the memo because it was 1-0 to Brighton, not some amalgamation of 3-1, and Fran Kirby with the single goal there. So if we touch on Everton Arsenal, we were at this game on Friday night. We were meant to have split, but then we ended both getting work for the one game. So we were at the same one. An interesting one. Speaking of pitches, wonderful pitch at Everton. Rest of the facilities may be a bit too small for a WSL team, in my opinion. Wonderful pitch. It's like carpet. But interesting game because last time Arsenal played Everton away, I believe it was a 1-1 draw, and it was a 0-0 draw this season as well. So, and Everton have been finding form. Arsenal have maybe had a little bit of a wobble. So this was going to be an interesting game. Renee Senegas had spoken about how she felt that Everton were the most tactically unpredictable team to go up against, which I thought was really interesting. And Brian Sorensen seemed to like having that kind of tag put upon the team. He said it's something that they're trying to do in and out of possession in different areas of the pitch, in the final third, in their own third. Like there's different things they want to be able to do in a game. And I think actually we're seeing how valuable that kind of style of play is, because it means you're not entirely wholly committed to one style, and that if people figure it out, you're kind of struggling a little bit. So first half, I thought, as expected, Arsenal had a lot of possession, struggled to break Everton down. Everton always looked dangerous. And I guess that's why we ended up with 1-1 at half time. Wasn't a huge surprise. I think the changes for Everton and the changes for Arsenal shifted the game a little bit. I think for Everton, they shifted formation, didn't they? And it actually opened the game up a little bit more for Arsenal to get in. And I think the substitutions helped with that as well. They brought on Blackstenius and Beth Mead, and Beth Mead was involved almost immediately. There were some really good stats around her that I've completely gone out of my head, but she basically created 3 high quality chances in a third of the time of the game in the kind of 20 minutes that she was on, or 30 minutes that she was on. So what did you make?
The difference for Renee Sleggers compared to the game against Liverpool is her decisiveness on the bench to manage the game. And I think is actually something she's been very good at in general, is that she is willing to change things up and she does make the changes. Against Liverpool, she made them way too late. She was kind of forced into the Beth Mead change at half-time, as I think Beth had a knock. But other than that, not bringing on the others until the 83rd minute, when you could already kind of see, even though Liverpool hadn't scored the goal yet, they had by 83 minutes, but they, earlier on in the second half, you could kind of see where the game was going.
It wasn't working. It was
they were really, really struggling. You just had that feeling that Liverpool would get their one chance, or they'd get a chance and they'd make it count. And we've been there many, many times before. I think in this one, massive potential stumbling block for Arsenal, but she got it right on the day. She got the game plan completely spot on in terms of the second half and making the changes when they really could impact. She noticed that Everton didn't come out with the same kind of verve or whatever energy maybe in the second half that they did have at times in the first half. I know Sorensen was very frustrated at the end. I think he's probably more frustrated about the second half performance than the first half, because I thought they were really in it in that first half. They banked up, they were compact, and they were trying to hit Arsenal on the counter-attack, and it worked several occasions.
Yeah.
And that's how they got their equaliser. So I think he'll be disappointed in how they faded away in that second period.
Yeah. But as you say, I think you're right, a potential stumbling block. And I do think Arsenal's mentality is something maybe that they need to work on a little bit, because they do sometimes come into games a little bit with the fear.
I think it's, it's not just with Arsenal though. We've seen what Everton's done against City this season. They beat them, and then forcing Chelsea to that kind of 93rd minute goal. They are a tough opposition to break down at the moment. They've got a lot more about them since the winter window, when they brought in some new much needed new bodies, and they're able to now become this kind of chameleon of a team.
Absolutely. What I was saying though is that's what kind of put the fear in Arsenal a little bit.
And I think the pressure, everyone talks about Arsenal having a blip. I don't think they've actually had much of a blip this year, but I think the 2 games where people think they're a blip is because of the City game, the cup game, and then the Liverpool game. And once you get knocked out of 2 cups, you're suddenly on a blip. In general, I don't think they're having much of a blip. They've been going pretty well in the league. Yes, they lost to Chelsea, but other than they gave it a really good go. And I don't think there's really a indictment on Renée Sleggers and what she's done with the club. I think certainly since she's come in,
and
they've
also
improved massively.
The expectation that a manager's going to come in like this and just get everything absolutely right.
She's going to make mistakes. Things going to happen. Football's football, and you're not going to win every game. And it's how you learn from that. And I think that was the most positive thing, is how she learned from the Liverpool.
100%. Speaking of Liverpool, they beat Manchester United 3-1 at Anfield. Finally shook off that Anfield losing streak that they had. They got their first win there. A surprising game, I'm going to say, because for the first 40 minutes, they hadn't had a shot, they hadn't created a chance, they hadn't had a touch in Manchester United's box, nothing like. And actually, when you watch back the game, it was very much, I mean, I'm sure their game plan wasn't to not have a touch in United's box, but it was very much to kind of nullify United's threats, to allow them to have possession. I thought they were really disciplined out of possession. They moved as a unit. They defended as a unit. I thought Olivia Smith obviously had an exceptional game, but was so good defensively. And it helped start off a number of those key counterattacks, which is what we saw. We saw, a perfect goal against the run of play. We saw a perfect counter-attacking goal. And suddenly Manchester United were 2-0 down going into half-time when Liverpool had essentially done nothing in United's half for the first 40 minutes.
But then it seemed like Man United weren't really prepared for that, particularly. And if anyone watched the Arsenal game the weekend before, you would have learned that that's what Liverpool kind of wants to do. They're going to make it tight for you. They're going to force, they're going to nullify your threats, and you've got to find a way to break them down. Now, it's maybe a bit different this time around because against Arsenal, they packed the central areas, I think. This time, they completely cut off the service to Bizet and Galton down the wings. Galton didn't have a touch in the first, well, she might have had a touch, but not literally.
Impacting it, yeah.
She had no kind of impact whatsoever. And then that cut off anything to Turland in the middle as well, like any kind of deliveries into the box, which she kind of feeds off. So I think United weren't really prepared for what Liverpool were putting them up against. And yes, they have possession and you can control the ball, but if you do nothing with it, then you're not going to win the game. I think Liverpool, we've known for, it's not a surprise about Liverpool's counter-attacking abilities.
No, but they're suddenly much more effective.
Yeah, and I think that comes with fitness and confidence. I know they were depleted with illness and stuff, but they've got Sophie Roman Hall back, who holds the ball up well. They've got really, really fast runners in terms of Olivia Smith and what she does. I mean, she's more than just her pace, but just having that impact on the counter-attack. Sam Kerr breaking at speed into the box, not something you normally necessarily associate with her, but she was there making the counter-attacking moves. It's something that Liverpool have been well drilled in for the last few seasons. They haven't quite had it work out so well this season at times, but that's what they can do.
But do you also think then it's probably a case of a little bit of confidence as well? They beat Crystal Palace, they knocked Arsenal out. Suddenly, everything's coming up smelling Liverpool, and suddenly those opportunities then that they create, they've got the confidence to actually take them on. So that could be, and an element of, I think, Manchester United underestimating them a little bit. So yeah, it was a very, surprising result, big result for Liverpool. They briefly went up into fifth until Brighton knocked them back down again. And Manchester United are now down in third, but that's on goal difference. But that was definitely put the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit, which I think is interesting.
I mean, it was a really, really good evening for us.
Yeah.
Friday evening, I think.
Yeah.
I know they're tied on points with United, but just to get their noses in front, it gives them just that little bit. And United
have a tough run in their last
three games are ridiculous for United.
Chelsea, Man City and Arsenal, I think.
Yeah. So I think Arsenal will be feeling slightly more happier and definitely more confident about, obviously the job's not done yet, but they will be feeling they've got themselves in the perfect position to kind of launch themselves to get that second spot.
Well, down the other end of the table, we also had some exciting movement, a little bit in points-wise. Palace 3, Aston Villa 1. This was the big game of the weekend. This was arguably the relegation battle. Should Palace lose it, you would say they're probably out now going to be relegated. Winning it, which they did, and in good fashion as well, has dragged not just Aston Villa, I would say, but Leicester back down into this relegation battle now, because Palace are on 9 points, Villa are on 10, and Leicester on 12. So suddenly you're kind of lassoing people up above and pulling them back down into this relegation battle. Give me your kind of key 3 takeaways from this, because you covered this one.
Start with Palace. I think they did the game plan really well. And I think particularly with the kind of thin squad that they had, I think they had 3 academy players on the bench because they were without Lexi Potter, who's been their best player, I think, this season. Although I think Chloe Arthur came in and did a job in the midfield area without the experience of Josie Green and stuff. But they were really, really up for it. They knew that this was their cup final in a way. I mean, every game now is going to be a cup final, but this was the one that they really had to get over the line. And they were all they had the energy. Katie Stengel came back in, and at times this season she's not looked at her best, but she brought the experience, she brought the energy. She was like breaking up play, she was winning tackles, bursting into the box. She got the shot that led to the corner that led to the first goal. She got the third goal because she was alert enough to read D'Angelo's
Don't watch that back.
pass.
Oh Jesus!
And then she was also involved in she got the flick on for the first goal, and then she was also the one who set up Virden for the. So she was everywhere. She was absolutely, and she stepped up to the plate like a player of her experience has to do in those moments. So I think they really performed out of their skins. They knew that this was their opportunity. Villa are just.
What's gone wrong? Do you think it's a case of not having the players needed to play the style of football that is wanted from Natalia?
Not necessarily. I think Villa have just been a conundrum all season. And when you saw them play against Chelsea, even both times they played against Chelsea this season, but Natalia's first game, they looked really, really good. And yes, they lost that game, but only just, and they had their chances. I think on Sunday they were too over-eager to try and make an impact like early on. They were like breaking. They had most of the ball. They were creating a few chances, but most of them were rushed. Most of them were from distance. You had Hansen, you had Salmon. They were all like shooting from outside the box and just rushing it. And I know it probably maybe contradicts what I was saying about City earlier, but actually you need that balance in between being too rushed and being too extra touchy.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I think it's a real conundrum, I think, with them, because they have the players, they have the experience. I think Jordan Nobbs did change the game when she came on. She added something to their attack. She hit the bar. But yeah, it's a bit of a worry, because when you look at their team sheet and look at the quality on it, and you compare it with the likes of Palace, but those, like, Rachel Daly wasn't in the game at all. She couldn't get herself into the game at all.
Do you think losing Leon and Dali, like, they weren't, maybe Dali especially wasn't getting used that much this season, but do you think maybe that was also something that could have been?
I think Dali is a miss. She was like their main, especially in the Carla Ward era. She was like one of their main, like her link up
Daly era.
Yeah, her link up with Daly and that kind of creative outlet in the 10 is really missing. Leon, maybe not so much, because she was so hot and cold at points. I think Chastity Grant is a brilliant player and offers what Leon did on the wing, and is probably more clinical and productive with it. But it just feels like everything's a bit off.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put a finger.
Pieces aren't quite fitting.
A finger on why. And it's hard to blame Natalia, because she's been in a hot second.
Yeah.
Like, there's obviously some fundamental core issues going on at the club that go way, way beyond that.
Okay, well, while you were doing that game, I was doing Spurs Brighton, which didn't really deliver, if I'm totally honest. I won't spend too long on this. I won't dwell, because I already spent 90 minutes watching it. It was dull. It was scrappy, really scrappy. Poor pitch, as usual, something both managers touched on. I always think it's really interesting if even the home managers like the pitch was really difficult. You've got a problem. Spurs started well, a bit like they did with City, but didn't capitalise on the opportunity of starting well. I think they massively missed Bethany England, not just because of what she does in front of goal, but just what she brings from the team. Sometimes she's like, I don't know what it is she says or does, but she kind of drags them to her and like, come on, we've got this kind of thing. And
but she also can score.
And she can score.
No one else seems to be able to.
But she often then goes back and gets the ball when she's not being fed, So I think they just struggled. I think then once Brighton settled, they started to dominate in possession and in terms of chances. And I think they would have liked to have won that a little bit more comfortably and could have, but didn't, which made the last kind of 10 minutes or so even more scrappy. I think the ref maybe didn't quite get a handle on the game. So we started to see quite a lot of tackles and challenges and bookings and angry benches. And it's always interesting to watch those kind of games from the tunnel. So not the best game. Brighton got their win. It was their first win in 2025, which seems mad because they're still in fifth, which actually kind of shows you the job they've done so far. But yes, fifth place. Spurs will be frustrated off the
also how, conversely, it could be how
poor the rest of the league.
Inconsistent everyone is.
Yeah.
Like, no one's been able to take a full advantage of everyone else's failings.
But that's always been the problem with the teams, I guess. Fighting for that fifth spot is the inconsistency. So
I'm so glad you told me about this game. They didn't register a shot on target, did they? Tottenham, I don't think. But I do go back and try and watch every game.
Yeah.
And
I saved you.
I swerved it. I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Right. It means this is how the table is looking. Chelsea are on top, sitting pretty on 44 points. Arsenal are now in second on goal difference on 36 points. Same points as Manchester United, who are in third, and City are sitting below on 32 points. Palace, though, down the bottom, are now on 9 points, as I said, with Villa just above on 10 and Leicester in 10th place on 12 points. So that is definitely going to be a fun run-in. Okay. Player of the week for you, please.
This is so hard.
Why do you act like it's the first time or you're surprised?
Well, now I've got to pick them from 2 competitions as well.
And you've seen enough.
Okay, I'm going to go with 2, but from the same team.
Okay.
So, Olivia Smith.
Knew that one.
Of course. Wax lyrical about her. I don't think there's any more to be said.
Do you know, though, I think for
How
this
brilliant
week,
she is.
For this week, not just about what she did going forward, which was excellent, but I think her work defensively was superb.
Covering.
It was such an all-round performance.
Yeah, and she just can change a game. Like, she is that player that can change a game in an instant. I think the other one that really deserves a shout out is Fuka Nagano, because she just I love watching her play, but she is the heartbeat of that Liverpool midfield. She hasn't been playing recently, but when she does, she just changes the game, and she can transition the game from attack to defense to attack in an instant, and then she scores a goal like she did on Friday night, and it's pretty special.
Yeah. Okay. Give me your spotlight moment. What are you shining a spotlight on this week?
So maybe not tactical, but you told me about this when City scored their goal. When Regina scored the equaliser for City, Yamashita was obviously down the other end, and she charged.
She took off like a hot snot.
I've never heard that phrase before. She literally charged all the way up the field to the other end and attempted a knee slide, which on that derby pitch is not going to end well for you.
She didn't quite faceplant the ground, but it was a very stuttering him to a stuttering stop.
So I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, I really rated that. She was very excited. You could just see the moment where she was like, fuck it, I'm going. And she just took off charging up the pitch. I like that. That was a good one. Okay, quickly to the Barclays Championship results. We have Durham 3, Newcastle 1, Birmingham 2, Southampton 1, Bristol City 1, Charlton 1, London City 1, Blackburn 0, Portsmouth 2, Sunderland 1. So this is very exciting. Birmingham now are on top, 35 points. London City on 32. Charlton and Durham are on 39. So 6 points separating the top 4. But down the bottom, there has been some movement finally for Portsmouth. Sheffield, though, are now in relegation spot on 6 points. Blackburn are in 10th on 7. And Portsmouth have bounced up to 9th. They're on 8 points with their back-to-back wins. So it's still extremely tight down there.
We have some relegation battles on our hands.
We do. It's almost like such an important part of the game. Okay. Moving on to Champions League. We are in Spain for it. Real Madrid versus Arsenal tonight. And then Manchester City versus Chelsea. Take 2 at the Joy Stadium. There are no easy fixtures in these Champions League quarterfinals. Not that there ever is, but there's no underdog, and there's no kind of team where you might look at it and go, or any kind of game where you could just really put your house on someone winning it. For me, I don't think. You might disagree, but Wolfsburg facing Barcelona, Bayern Munich facing Lyon, so many tasty fixtures.
I'm not going to jinx it because I'm having a really bad week. So
right, well, let's not
jinx it.
Yeah, because I know what game you're going to say might not be so bad, but you think Arsenal should win this?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. That's your insight there now. Take that away with you. We're going to clip that up and put it on Instagram.
Yes.
Manchester City versus Chelsea, we've kind of touched on in the League Cup final roundup, but that's going to be an interesting one. What I think is interesting for the final 3 games is that 2 of them will be at the Joy Stadium, won't they? And 1 at Stamford Bridge. And, one of them was on a neutral ground. So Does that give City an edge? I don't know. They've had a pretty impressive performance during the Champions League group stages this year. So maybe they can draw on that again. We shall see. I'm excited for it, but we will be there. And we will bring you all the action from Real Madrid, Arsenal as well. So this week, as I said, we will be covering those 2 Champions League games. Then you will be doing Everton versus Palace on Saturday. And my mother's visiting. So I tend to just do one game at the weekend, and it tends to be on a Sunday because she goes home Sunday morning, because I don't want to have to not drag her to football, but, I'm the one that loves football. So you'll be doing Everton versus Palace. Then you're doing Leicester versus Brighton on Sunday, and I'm doing West Ham versus Spurs. So bit of a London derby. So yeah, if you're following us across all of our social media platforms, you will not miss any of the action or any of our coverage. We will do a live at some point on Saturday, depending on your schedule. I'm not sure when you're going up to Merseyside and when you're going to be back, but
yeah, that might be tricky.
We'll get something done. We will get something done. And then we'll be back, of course, next week with an episode early on in the week, rounding up all of the weekend's actions and Champions League action as well. So in the meantime, have a great week. We'll speak to you soon.